Alright, so since I moved back to Canada, I've been mostly focused on growing my YouTube channel. But through word to mouth, and also thanks to the popularity of my channel, I was able to work with a few professional teams here in Montreal. For example, I shot a media day with an East Coast League hockey team. I also shot a lot of football during the fall season. Let's go! And now I'm slowly getting into basketball. Tonight, I'm filming a game between the Montreal Tundra and the Tri-State Admirals. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to take you guys through my game day filming kit because I do get a lot of questions about it since I tend to go in a slightly different direction than most. I also want to show you what I consider to be a basic yet very efficient game day filming kit for sports videography beginners or simply for sports videographers on a budget. Alright, so this is my camera kit right there that I use on game day. As you can see, it is very minimal. That's how I like it. I like to travel light because it allows me to be very versatile when I'm shooting. I can move around, I can go in the crowd, I can go on the sidelines. I'm not worried about carrying a lot of stuff, and I'm not worried about getting in anybody's way or if there's enough space for me to fit here or there. So basically my kit, let's start with the camera. It's a Sony FX3 camera. I love it because it has all the bells and whistles of a cinema camera, but in the size of a mirrorless camera. It does 4K 120p in 10-bit color. It has internal stabilization. It has XLR audio inputs. It has great dynamic range. I'm not gonna go through everything, but these are all things that I love. But if you wanna know more about it, there's a link in the description below with my game day filming kit. You can look at the camera and everything else that I'll mention from this point on. But anyway, around the camera, first of all, I've got a little cage. It's an FX3 half cage. I use the half cage because I love XLR microphones, and to use an XLR microphone on the FX3, you need to use the audio handle because that's where the microphones connect. So I needed the half cage because the full cage basically takes over the top part of the camera and you can't connect the handle anymore. So with the half cage, it's perfect. It just does this L shape and leaves the top open for me to use the handle. And then I also bought, this is a small rig half cage, by the way, and I also have a small rig handle that I use on the left side of the camera. So I always have my left hand on it. It allows me to be very stable. And then my right hand I put either on the camera or on the lens. Speaking of the lens, because tonight I'm filming a basketball game, the lens that you see on the camera right now is a Tamron 35-150 f2 to 2.8. I love that lens for basketball because it's great in low light. Obviously, f2 to 2.8, like being able to film at f2 at 35 mil is great for shots under the basket, for crowd shots, all these things. And 150 at f2.8 is still very good for low light, and 150 is a great range for basketball. And 35 is still wide enough to be on the baseline and capture players driving to the basket. So for me, that's the perfect lens for basketball. It's not cheap, but the great thing about it is that it can do pretty much any sport. I've made a video about it already. I love its versatility and its high quality. So if I was to invest in only one lens, for sure it would be this one, for sports anyway. Otherwise, on top of the camera, there's the audio handle that I mentioned earlier. That's where I connect my shotgun microphone. But on the handle itself, there's first of all an extender that I bought from, not from Small Rig. I think I got that from Condo Blue, if I'm not mistaken. And it just basically makes the handle a little bit longer because I've got big hands. So it's just easier to grab. But I also have a cage, a plastic cage that was made. It's like a 3D print thing that was made specifically because the audio unit is actually very fragile. Like mine broke very early on. I was lucky that only the plastic broke, nothing else. But yeah, it can break very easily. So for that reason, I put this thing over it. It protects it. And on top is obviously my microphone. It's a Deity S-Mic 2S. I love this microphone because its quality is amazing, especially for run and gun type of audio. And I also love the fact that it's quite small, because sometimes a longer shotgun mic on a smaller camera, if you're using a wide lens, sometimes the tip of the shotgun mic will actually appear in your shot. So to make sure that that didn't happen, I went with this mic because it's very short. So there's no way, even with a dead cat on, there's no way that this mic would get in my shot, no matter what lens I'm using. The other thing on the handle is obviously the monitor, which I already reviewed on this channel. It's a Portkeys LH7P. I love it because of its size, because of its quality, but because of all the features as well that I talked about in my review. You can adjust the autofocus, you can touch focus on the monitor itself. And also it's pretty good on batteries too. I know with a battery like the one I have on right now, it will last me easily the entire game, probably a couple games if I needed it to. So I'm very happy overall with this monitor. Battery wise, I recently switched from using the normal Sony batteries that come with the FX3 to using a V-mount battery. There's a few reasons for that. Actually, my next video, I'm gonna sort of talk a bit more about that. But one of the main reasons, the main reason obviously, is the fact that with a V-mount battery, there's enough power in there that I can keep my camera turned on the entire pre-game, game, post-game, whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, there's still going to be about 50-60% left in the battery. So there's no fear. There's no, oh, am I running out of batteries? Am I about to run out on this battery? Should I switch batteries while nothing's happening? And then you do that and then the goal happens or whatever. So with a V-mount battery, you're good all day. You don't have to turn off your camera. You don't have to worry about anything. You're good to go. And also, I kind of like the idea of having a heavier kit. Even though I like it small, I like it heavy too, because the lighter it is, like every movement gets amplified. It's a lot harder to be stable when, like, this lens, for example, is extremely heavy. So having a heavier back also balances the whole kit, the whole rig. So yeah, for all those reasons, having a V-mount battery is very helpful to me. And the other great thing about V-mount batteries, by the way, is that I can charge everything with it. So when I'm bringing this to a game, not only is it charging my camera all day, but I can use it to charge my laptop if I need to. I can charge my phone. I can charge anything that has a USB connection. So yes, I personally use a small rig V-mount battery. And just to be clear, when you buy the battery, it just comes by itself. So if you want to attach it to the camera, you need that little metal attachment right here that connects the battery to the FX3 half gauge. As far as accessories, in my camera bag, I always have one of these. This I use to do that. This is basically to clean my lenses, and that way you're just pushing air on the lens instead of using a cloth, which could potentially scratch the lens if you're not careful or if the cloth is dirty. So I love to, and it's pretty cheap. I don't know how much I paid for this, but no more than $10, that's for sure. Also bring VNDs. I use VNDs even when I'm filming basketball, not all the time, but a lot of the times actually. That's what I meant when I said that I tend to go in a different direction than most people. I do that because even though I could play with the ISO to adjust the brightness of my image, I love to stay at the native ISO at all times to keep the noise, the grain out of the equation. But if on my FX3, the first native ISO is at 800, and if I'm filming at 120p, shutter speed around 1/320, sometimes 1/400, at an ISO of 800, it gets a bit dark. So I go to the second native ISO, which is 12,800, and that's very bright, obviously. So that's where bringing in an ND filter, I'm usually at 2 stops on the filter, and yeah, that allows me to control my image, being at the right exposure and being, more importantly, on the native ISO. So therefore, no grain, no noise, perfection. But if I was starting my journey in sports videography today, and I was looking for a kit that allows me to do that in decent quality, allows me to start my portfolio on Instagram and potentially get my first clients and still produce some, paid work for those clients at a level that they'd be happy with. I always recommend this bad boy, the Sony ZV-E10. This is the best bang for your buck when it comes to budget sports videography. At least it is right now in 2024. I would stick to 1080p. That way you have access to higher frame rates like 60 or 120, and you can be much more creative in your edits. Otherwise, there's also image stabilization in there. It's not as good as the one on my camera because this one is mechanical. This one is electronic. So it's a little bit different. There's mistakes in there. It's not always perfect. There's a bit of wobble when you move the camera around, so make sure that you stay stable. There's little things in there that are not perfect, but that's why this camera is about $600 and that one is about, I can't even remember how much it is now, but it is much, much more. Lens-wise, it's sort of the same thing. This is about $1,800, some maybe $1,900. This one is $1,000 less. It's the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8. The lens itself is actually more expensive than the camera. So yes, you can go with a cheaper lens if you don't have the money to buy this because you already put all your money in that. But to me, I would start with this over a longer sort of, because you could go for 70 to 180, for example, in the Tamron family. That does pretty much the same thing as this one, but at a longer range. But it depends on the sports that you're filming. Because today I'm in basketball mood right now. So if you're filming basketball, I would definitely go with the 28 to 75. But if you're always outdoors filming rugby or football or lacrosse, then yeah, go with the 70 to 180. Otherwise, if you don't have the money for those type of lenses and you want something that's going to be more of like 300, 400 bucks, just focus on the zoom range. Don't focus on the autofocus and the f-stop and all these things. If you can only buy one lens and it has to be super cheap, go with the lens that's going to give you the maximum zoom range. That's my advice anyway. Other people might have a different opinion, but for me, if you can find something that's like a 18 to 200 or something along those lines, go with that. It won't be perfect. It'll be frustrating sometimes, but at least you can capture anything with it. You can do any sport and you can see what you like and what you don't like about it as well. So in your next lens, you'll know exactly what you want. Otherwise, microphone wise, I love this little Rode microphone. It's not as good again as my XLR shotgun microphone, but it does the job and it's much better than the internal mic on the camera. So this kit right here with variable NDs, if you're filming outdoors, if you're filming indoors, there's no second native ISO on this camera, so there's no point in pushing the ISO higher to then take it down with the variable NDs. Stick to this. But if you're filming outdoors, yeah, definitely get variable NDs. But indoors, you're good going the way it is right now. Obviously, if you're not super experienced filming handheld, don't force it. Don't try to be Superman. Get yourself a tripod. But if you do want to learn how to film handheld properly, how to make sure that you can, like I said at the beginning, get around the court, get around the field easily, handheld, you're moving around, you're shooting everything, and you're not worried about carrying a tripod, a gimbal, or a monopod, then just check out my next video coming out next week, because the basketball game that I'm shooting today, I'm going there specifically to show you how to film handheld. The tricks that I use that make my footage look as good and as stable as this. So if you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. And until then, go out, film any sport you can. Doesn't matter if it's professional, amateur, kids, adults, who cares? Practice, get your reps in, have fun, and we'll see each other next week.